Hey everybody, if you haven't seen this video, check it out. It captures a crazy moment of synchronicity on stage during my guitar solo for Punky's Whips. I have two drummers on the Rockspostrophe tour, Ryan Brown and Zach Tabori. When we were playing, we hooked up out of nowhere, spontaneously. While I was playing, they played some of the same rhythms, and sometimes I would try to play things I heard them play. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if we got together, Ryan, Zach, and myself, and we talked about what happened on stage so you could see how it all came together. I think it might be fascinating to do more of this, a play-by-play series. Why don't you let me know in the comments if you like this sort of thing? I'm going to find some spots in the solo. I'm just going to get your reactions to see what you think was happening in that moment. The first thing is just the beginning of the solo. And the thing about it is I do play a phrase that's similar to what my dad played. And it does set up the overall feeling and context. But out of the gate, you pick up on one of the phrases that I start playing. So let's have a listen and see what it does. So it has this kind of ripping, bluesy thing that's similar to what he's doing, but there's like a back and forth between what I'm playing and what you're playing, and Ryan's kind of hanging back for the top of this thing. So in those moments when the solo starts, are you having some sense of, this feels like the first time I heard this song, or this feels like I'm living inside the New York version, because there's elements that my dad actually played that I'm kind of utilizing in that. So what is happening in your brain when that solo starts that way?
Well, for me, it's actually very similar to what you're describing. And, you know, Ryan and I talked about this because this goes back to when we can pay homage to Terry Bozzio and when we're kind of going to do something different. So for this section, after the first hits, we decided that I was going to do, you know, my Terry Bozzio inspired fills and also try to react to what you were doing. So one of the Terry things that I always loved is, you know, the snare and then the dual china.
Yeah.
And then, you know, sometimes adding a triplet or a flam in there too. So if you do the dun 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 so dun 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 dun, you know, I'm going to try to play off of that a little bit.
Yeah.
And so in the beginning of the solo, it's sort of listen to Dweezil, pay homage to Terry, and then the jam is going to start after we do this 4 times. So this is kind of a section that I always have mapped out in my head where there are a couple of rules that I'm following, but it's not fully, you know, ready for outer space yet.
Well, that's a cool thing to know, because when I'm setting it up and having sort of a frank moment, when it then has a Terry moment, it's putting me in the headspace of like, oh, this feels like it's 1977.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's the teleporting back in time kind of feeling. And I think the audience gets a sense of that too, because it's not the same as like, oh, this solo is happening in real time right now in front of me with a feel that's not familiar. It feels very familiar to the era of the record, and it's evocative of all of that.
Definitely. Yeah, Ryan and I kind of decided that I think we were going to start out the fills before the verse that's over this funk jam, that we were both going to kind of do some Terry stuff. Then we do the jam, then we do a little bit more Terry stuff. And then once the jam really starts, that's when we start kind of adding our own spin onto the feel and then changing it up a little bit. But this
Which
part
is the same thing that happens in my own playing.
Yes, yes.
So it's funny that it's...
it makes perfect sense.
There's a section where I play this phrase that starts off with groups of 5, but it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And then it builds into this quirky thing. And there's usually a point in the solo where I do something like this, maybe not the exact lick, but then it gets answered, and it's this is kind of a setup for that. So the tricky part here is, where do I leave spaces? So my issue with what happens in my own soloing sometimes is that I listen back and I go, I wish I left way more spaces. And as a guitar player, it's very difficult to stop what you're doing and leave a space, where as a drummer, it's a totally different headspace, and the physical nature of the thing is different. You almost more often than not are keeping time by continuing to play when you're playing guitar. But if you have rhythms that you want to have be more interesting, you need to either shift the whole phrase on the up or somewhere else, or you leave holes. But it's the thought of, while you're playing, going, oh, I should leave a space here. But the whole time I'm thinking about that, I've left no spaces. So it's easier for me to do that when there's something that happens rhythmically that I hear, and then I stop and go, okay, how can I redo what I just heard? And so that's part of the whole conversation that happens. But I do find myself playing and playing and playing a lot, thinking, wow, this is like too much of a run-on sentence, because I'm not hitting on the exact idea. But sooner or later, we hook up on things, you know. And I think what we just looked at is a good example of, like, I came up with something that had some interesting rhythms in it, and you immediately started playing on it. And then I was like, okay, that's a cool answer. But then I was like, what's the next interesting rhythm? But it takes a while to get there. So I don't remember what happens after this, but let's see what happens.
And I feel like a lot of it is having a conversation, like we're having a conversation right now.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, if somebody is talking to me, I'm not going to talk over them at the same, like you goes back to the listening thing.
Yeah.
Like you said, then it'll build, you'll think of other topics, stuff will build. So I always think of it the same way.
Yeah.
Musically.
It's also going back to the thing that you said, where we're talking about this now for the first time. We've never had a discussion about what we were going to do for the solo.
Yeah.
Or what our headspace is.
Or what our headspace is. Both of you are talking about doing call and response and trying out riffs and ideas. And then I naturally said, okay, I'm just going to play a simple tom, snare, tom, snare. And I'm just going to hang in the back seat while they do their thing. And then we'll see where we're going.
Yeah.
And so it all just kind of fits.
And it was the opposite for the top of the solo.
Exactly.
So
the top of the,
so the top of the solo, I'm hanging back
Mhm.
and you're crushing the Bozzios stuff. And then it flips.
Totally flips. Yeah.
Yeah. But we never talked about
We never
that.
talked about this
What's-
at all. It just
What's
happened.
funny
Yeah.
though is, at a certain point, it's two Bozzios.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's,
exactly.
That's up here. Yeah.
Yeah.
On the
Yeah.
graph.
I know. Well, because both of us just want to do it so badly.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
That's the tricky part though, because it gets back to the thing of, you have to filter your own playing through what you know of Terry's vocabulary and what is reminiscent of what's in the recording, so that the listener also feels like they're experiencing something from that era. So the whole thing about being evocative of the recording or the era or the people playing the music, it's a fine line. It's a dance that has to be done, where you want to be able to, in real time, interpret your own ideas and play them, but it's also being filtered through the vocabulary that you're used to for that instrument.
Yeah. And for drums, so I figured this out years ago. It's not something I thought about as a kid. This was way later, where physically I try to think about what would Terry be doing. So in my head, while we're playing, I kind of see him in my head with his shirt off,
The
the
Speedo.
camera
Yeah, the
right
Speedo.
here, you know, and like and how he's physically moving.
Yeah.
And so I always think about that, you know, with him and Chester and Chad and Vinny and Ralph and all the
Definitely.
so just something else to throw out there. I'm thinking like, what would he be doing? And then, like you said, as a listener, because the first record I bought was Zappa in New York. So if I were a fan going to the show, I want to hear it sound like as much as
And
Zappa
have
in New York.
some of the specific
Yeah.
bells and
Yeah.
and the mannerisms in the music that make it feel like it's from the album, from the era, and that it's really happening in real time. It's not just a regurgitation of what was actually played,
Right.
because we're not doing it note for note. There might be phrases that are very similar, but that's the tricky part of this is, can we create the recipe that makes it feel like it's from that era?
Sure. Because, you know, there were certain, you know, styles of guitar playing and styles of drumming that just didn't exist yet, or that happened later, that are a more
Right.
contemporary way of improvising over, you know, this kind of a feel. Whereas in 1977, what it meant to be a top tier jazz player or rock player or a fusion player was something totally different than what it means now.
Yeah.
You know, there's, you know, none of the two hand stuff or anything like that.
Right. Well, the
Yeah.
thing about the guitar playing is, and you'll see it, like I start shaping some of the notes with the wah pedal. It's not the waka 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 thing. It's really just more of a filter of, it gets more mid-rangey or throaty or whatever it becomes. And that's a thing that also changes the character and the sound and the feel of the solo. And that, I think, starts happening right now. Let's
See, I just heard one. Yeah,
So there's a hookup. There's a big,
there's one.
yeah.
And then if you look in the camera, as soon as you started playing the right hand goes right to the hi-hat, because I'm switching a pocket, because I know that you're going in on the toms and you're going to go in on the riff. So again, we never had this conversation before.
Yeah.
Right.
But in that moment, and whenever stuff like that happens, it just goes, you know, in that direction.
And that phrase, it's a 1, 2.
It's fine.
3,
One,
4. It's kind of because I'm sliding into it, but as that da 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 part.
Oh, 6. Yeah. When did they?
As that part starts happening, I also change where it starts. I shift it over, because depending on what Ryan started doing with it, I either like to make it where we're playing the exact same thing, or that it's shifted by one note. So I listen for it, and then I try to see if I can move it over, because that's where it starts to have this real slippery falling down the stairs thing. And then when we do hit a big downbeat, it's like, oh, wow, that's a surprise. Like they actually did know where they were.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah,
You know?
totally.
So I think there's moments like that. Let's see if we see another one. If I go back, we'll hear what we were just talking about. The phrase is allowing for things to get set up, but then you do whack, 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 which is like the full setup. Like, okay, now we're marking, this thing's going to kick it into a new gear.
I'm sure as a soloist, when you hear something like that, that's got to kind of give you that extra push to go, all right, I'm starting a new idea right here on the, you know, that's kind of a, all right, here we go. Step 2.
And that was fun, because I did it and then you answered it.
Oh, I did it.
And then you went,
Oh, that was another thing we were doing. I wanted to try putting the triplet in an unusual place. So it would be dun 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 1, 2, or what dun dun 1, 2, 3, and then we would meet on another beat or something like that. Because I think I think I did it this time.
Well, let's see what happens.
I don't know.
Because
something happened.
Because it definitely marks the next chapter.
Yeah, totally.
And I think it's, let's see, should be right here.
Oh, there it is. There's on the 2, And then we do the big triplet.
So that was a thing where it's
Yeah.
like we're all playing essentially a similar rhythm all at the same time, and it just sounds like this cacophony. But then right after, it's right back to the groove. So
Yeah.
for a listener, it's got to be like, oh, this is like building and building, and then it goes to the groove. So it's very different than what you hear in a traditional solo. A solo is the drums and the band are kind of just playing a form thing, and it might have a couple fills, but it's not really following the contour of the emotion of the solo per se. The solo is supposed to just sit on top of everything and take everybody's attention. This is the whole band is building something all at once.
Right.
It's a spontaneous composition. So I think if I was watching that in the audience and I see these peaks and valleys and where things join up, I would be thinking to myself, oh, wow, these guys are really good. They really are listening to each other, and there's this exciting thing that's happening. And I don't hear that in a lot of other context for other music anymore. But it was always my favorite thing in my dad's solos because he would just take it into outer space, and people in the band did their best to hold on or support it, because rhythmically it got crazy sometimes.
I remember in Philly, at the Keswick, but it was I can't remember what song it was, but I remember building a solo, and we like landed at like a clear like next level of solo, and I remember people standing up.
Yeah.
They actually got out of their seat, and the solo wasn't done.
wasn't
and
done
they
yet. They were
knew
in
that,
the-
but they were so excited about the emotional response from like the build,
Yeah.
and then like
I
landing on
remember
like
that.
we went up 4 stairs, and we're now on the 5th stair, and they were like,
Yeah.
Well,
Dope.
that's a good thing to bring up because that is the difference between a good show and a great show. And you sense what's happening. There's like a exchange of energy with the audience and the band on stage. And I think it happens for various reasons. Sometimes it's just the layout of the venue itself, the proximity to the stage, and how well we can see the people because of the lighting in the venue. If they're too dark and we can't really see them, it's almost like we're doing a puppet show,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it really does change what happens if we can notice a reaction. It does like automatically bring things up a level that it wouldn't have had otherwise.
Sure.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, and for me too, because like I'm always in the back, and a lot of shows I can't see past like the 5th row, and then there's all kinds of gear and all of you guys in front of me. So sometimes it's hard. And you're right. So in Philly, I remember that night I could see further than normal.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I remember this like group of people stood up, and I'm like, yeah, let's go.
And
Yeah.
there were people on the sides, and sometimes there were the folks on the sides that just wanted to dance or
Right.
something
Right,
like
right,
that.
right.
No, Philly was a special one too for that reason.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
could see more people. There were more folks that wanted to just really engage with what was happening. And you can tell in a jam, but it's not just us. I think when it's good, the audience can almost certainly tell too.
Yeah. And that is also the difference when you listen to it later, because you might have thought in the moment, I don't know, wasn't the best, but the audience was feeling something.
Yeah.
And they made it become something different than what it might have been if they didn't stand up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that is an interesting thing that you can't account for. You just never
Sure.
know what it is.
Yeah.
But they become the more memorable things from the tour. And then certainly when you listen back to it, you can discover, oh, I see why the audience got it, because there was a reaction that maybe we didn't hear altogether.
But
at
they're
the moment.
feeling it.
Yeah. So you guys ended up playing the fill from Trouble Every Day.
This is all Ryan Brown's idea right here. This was something that Ryan started that turned out to be a really fun tease in the solo, and this was your idea.
But how does it? Do you guys hear something and then it triggers it, or are you?
Well,
you have a
either one of
visual
us can
cue?
call it. So basically,
Yeah.
Ryan and I are looking at each other, and then sometimes, again, this isn't planned. Either Ryan will mouth or I'll just mouth,
Yeah.
You know, treble. And that means, you know, when you get to the spot in the bar, da-da, da-da, and then you do the fill.
But I heard you started going to the 16th note thing. That has kind of like
it was like da 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 da.
Yeah.
Like and it landed on that.
Right.
And like Zach said, like there could be 3 shows where we don't do it at all. Like I just just done. So just random.
Ryan typically calls treble. I typically call the fill from Natural Science by Rush.
Nice.
which is which I don't think has ever been used in a slow funk context ever. But I don't know, something happened again during a jam where I realized, oh man, Ryan also grew up learning all of the same songs that I did. Okay, let's see what happens if I just said Natural Science.
The first one we did was YYZ.
It
was YYZ.
That's right. I did a fill from YYZ, and then I kind of looked at Ryan, and I could see you were laughing. And then it said, okay, we're totally going to link up on this. Natural Science.
And we had talked about the Natural Science fill like 3 days before on the bus.
It was in your high school yearbook.
My mom put it on my high school graduation cake.
Natural Science.
The notation.
On my I'll find a photo of it. On my high school graduation, she did the notation for the fill. We were talking about the bus, so we thought about it like 72 hours
right
before.
now, both of you play it, air drum it right now.
1, 2, 3, 4. Tap.
Okay, now tap it out.
Wait. We can do it tighter than that. Do it again.
Tap it out though. So
yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4.
So that's a moment where we start playing something. Wow. I start shifting it over, and then Bobby's looking around like, wait. He's having to keep it in the normal context. And but then it starts getting a little bit shifted to where it is hard to tell what's happening. So then it's like, all right, I'll just play some more notes. And we start playing a bunch of things together till it then gets back to a final big downbeat. But it was, for a moment, like, this could go off the rails.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we've had a number of those over the years where we just, like, somehow drop into the exact thing.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere. I love that one. That's and you're on that one note. Like, that's great. And then I went into a thing where it was like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. I was like, started going, like, sort of groups of 3 over the bar line. And then you stayed, and that's it was awesome. It was like, it just sounded like...
Yeah, if I can roadmap this out, I knew that Ryan was going to go for the over-the-bar tom fill, so I switched to pocket. You heard Ryan's 16th note, started... You'd never ended the fill and did the China cymbal rhythm to go with what DWEEZIL was playing. And then, you know, and then... It's as if something said in my head, so now I have to do the thing. It's just, okay, so you're not going back, I'm not going back. Okay, we gotta go.
That's when Bobby's looking around.
Exactly. Just, everything is just, all right, we're going to the next dimension. Here we go.
And then all 3 of us were sort of like in different times doing this sort of like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Like, I think this started off the first domino that fell to go to the next thing.
Yeah.
Because it all started.
And so that is the precursor to the next thing that goes into outer space. But it's, as an audience, they've taken all these small journeys, and then we get to this one where it just starts to feel like we're floating in time. And I just knew in that moment that was a special thing that only that audience was going to see. And we'd be able to replicate something because we would hear it and go, oh, we could do something like that again. But how it naturally went there is
it's never
unique for
again.
That audience and would never happen that way ever again.
Absolutely.
So let's see how long it takes to get to that anti-gravity moment. coming right up. You guys set this up. The idea in my mind at the time, because I don't know, I'm not thinking in terms of, you guys probably could know exactly what's happening in terms of the rhythms involved. But for me, I'm thinking just in terms of like, where is this particular shape moving from, you know? And so you might already know that it's a triplet figure or whatever it is, but I'm like, okay, I could start before the beat and also end this phrase. And every time I hear them do something, should I try to shift it one more earlier or one more later? And so you can almost see the wheels turning in my mind, but the audience is just like, what's happening here?
Yeah, no, I mean, I remember in moments like this, I'm kind of in a similar mindset as what you're describing. I sort of drop my concept of time and I'm just listening to both of you and trying to free express what fits in the spaces that are left.
Yeah.
And at that moment, even though we're all kind of going to that dimension, that's when I become most reliant on Ryan and even a visual cue, because I need to watch your hands, because you're basically going to determine where that downbeat is. And so I know eventually a hand is going to come up to this level to hit a crash, and that's going to be the downbeat, because I'm not counting, I'm not thinking, this is what's happening. And we're just playing with rhythms, and somehow the other three band members are playing that horn line in time over what we're doing.
Yeah.
They're counting, we're not, or at least you and I might not be.
Yeah, I definitely am not.
Yeah,
there
I'm not
are
counting.
times when if it starts to get really out of control, I do the same thing. I'm like, all right, let me just wait till I can see him hit a crash.
Yeah, exactly.
Because then it will be like, all right, now we're back. But there's times when I'm not looking at what he's doing at all.
Oh, right.
And I'm just listening to what's happening.
Sure.
But if it goes to a place where I have no idea where I am, then I have to see a visual cue, because otherwise.
Oh, totally. I have a feeling that when we ask Ryan about this part, you're definitely keeping it.
Well, okay,
but
so-
your brain is also, you know, this big. You can multitask all of these numbers and play 5/3/17.
Well, thanks. So two things. I feel like we've heard, going back through the last like 3 minutes, there's a number of times where all three of us have been playing groups of three. So if we're like, if we're here like 1, 2, 3, 4, and so like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So at various points, you did it, I jumped on it, then it goes back, and then you might do it, and I might jump on it. Like, so it's kind of been simmering there for a little while.
Yeah.
And then one of the most fun things, obviously, about solos and improvisations, you don't know where it's going to go. So this particular night, like, it just kept going, and then we did the da 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 da, the 16th note thing, da 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 da, and then in the middle of that, I went back to the 3 thing.
Right.
You jumped on the 3 thing.
Yes.
And then in the middle of that, I remember thinking, if it's here, 2, 3, 4, it was like 1, and then I just remember thinking it should go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Which is how I
like on
started
top of
hearing
it.
it as 6
Yeah.
instead of what we were doing.
But I never once ever thought, oh, we're going to go into 6 tonight. Like, ever. It's like all of these things had to line up, and then we started doing it, and I remember kind of going like this and thinking, cool, we should just do that. And then it's Kurt and Bobby then holding down the
that are
fort.
holding down the hits.
Yeah,
Which, I mean,
and
it's crazy, because I forgot what the original, you know, bar count was, and I just thought, are we landing this? We're landing this. This is really, oh my God, they're all doing it. How are they doing it? It blew my mind.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
So, and then in the middle of that, then you start
You play
shifting
the riff.
stuff, like different notes, different
because
numbers of notes
because
shifting.
You have this triplet thing, so it's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 for what I'm doing, but then without adding the note, I'm doing and 1, 2, 3. So it's like
Yeah.
I just start moving it to
Mhm.
where the and part is, and then I start tacking things on to the end of it. It ends with 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
And then when you went to the 4, that's when I was like, we're going out.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, because
Yeah.
I mean, then it's, again, I'm never thinking about this at all. It's like, how long do we live in this
Right.
place? It's like
Yeah.
the movie Inception. It's like we're in the dream state of the dream state.
Yes.
How long do we stay there? Do we go to another dream state, or do
Yeah.
we go back down? Like,
Sure.
but so then when you went to the 4, I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Now it's
But it's weird because how the 4 got introduced was sort of like the anticipation before one of the 3s, and then it just like shifted
Right.
the whole thing. So it wasn't like downbeats of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like
Right.
and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So
Yeah.
it just had this weird thing where it just slipped in.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It was just all.
It was just all happening
swimming,
at once.
yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it was insane. And then, I guess a good cue that there's a downbeat or something happening is, there's if snare drum is coming up, if ucha ucha, or
Yeah.
there's a certain type of ucha. There's a certain or
Oompa
da
Loompa.
da da da. If Ryan Oompa Loompas, then that's how you know that there's a downbeat that's about to
Good
come.
day, sir.
You lose.
Yeah.
Oh my god. No, and so that's kind of a good cue. All right, everyone better pay attention because this is cueing that crash that's
Yeah.
going to happen, and let's see if we land it. And that's kind of the icing on the cake is, are we going to do it? If you're
Yeah.
watching the slow motion of the kickflip, the board is turning up and put
Yeah.
we did it.
And that's the thing is that the process of playing this music, everybody has a role, and it's key in the orchestration and arranging, so that those little things like the horn hits, those stabs, they bring everybody back to the form.
Yes.
And so we just went into outer space, but the form snuck in the middle of the outer space part, and that
Yes.
was like, they probably were feeling, okay, we're going to get to that thing. But before their entrance, we shifted into the outer space. So they probably, oh, how are we going to land this
Yeah.
part? So I love when those things happen because the best players can ride out that form
Yeah.
through whatever the storm is that is rhythmically happening. And, for me, if that was just me having to be the thing holding that down, I would be in a panic state. I would be
Yeah.
like, I have no idea where I am. There's nothing here to help me navigate this.
We got to give props to the other band
Yeah, I was
members
just
for
gonna
that.
say that.
Yeah.
Too.
I mean,
yeah.
the fact that they decided to come into the form when we were going out, 9 out of 10 players would have just, maybe hit the first note and then backed off because they were, oh, whoops, sorry, mistake, I made
Yeah.
a mistake. But
Yeah.
they pushed through it and
Yeah.
they did the full, 4 repetitions of the melody.
Right.
And they did it over us experimenting and just, like it was a piece of cake. And
Yeah.
seriously, I mean, got to give him props for hanging in there.
Oh,
that
yeah.
was so badass.
And at the end of the day, somebody watching this and you're just listening to it, you would just think, oh, they're just playing a tune. But all these things happened and it's layer upon layer of madness.
Yeah.
But it's super exciting as a musician to be able to play with other musicians that can build that. And my dad had described it so many times as making air sculptures and trying to spontaneously compose. And that is a very difficult thing to do. But when you have good musicians, it becomes possible. So if you're watching it and going, oh, it's just a solo, it's like any other solo that I've ever heard, I don't know what you've been listening to, but that's not normal what just happened. So If you like this kind of discussion where you see what's in the minds of the musicians as it is happening, I guess let us know, because we'll do some more of that. But thanks for watching. We had a great time playing it. We hope you enjoyed watching us talk about it and get some insight into the craziest solo moment that has ever happened to me live on stage.
Felt like time stopped in the middle of that.